There was one time in the Santa Barbara game, and he fainted and got a little lightheaded.
You're talking, and you're kind of watching, and then it's, oh my goodness, he's down, and he just kind of crumples.
Gathers would undergo tests for over a week after his first collapse on December 9th.
He was, undergoing tests for those 10 days. They were brutal phone calls. He was scared to death.
And then when the diagnosis came forward, that's when, I reiterated with him on a phone conversation. I said, you do everything exactly the way the doctors tell you. And he was so frightened. And he was so absolutely frightened. He said, Coach, I promise you, I will do exactly what they tell me to do.
I know exactly what happened to me, picture perfect, and I hope it never happens again. I don't think it will.
After tests showed the severity of Hank Gather's abnormal heart rhythm, cardiologist Dr. Vernon Hattori prescribed Enderol, a heart medicine, to correct the problem. The 240 milligram dosage worked, but left Gather sluggish.
In St. Joe's, he played badly, and Hank looked drugged. I mean, he looked like he just finished a six-pack, and that was the Enderol.
Gradually, Dr. Hattori reduced the amount of medicine. 1 week before the fatal collapse, Dr. Hattori reduced the Enderol portion from 80 milligrams to 40, with a stipulation that Gathers would see him immediately for more tests to determine if the lower amount of medicine was safe and effective. Gathers never came in for those tests and convinced the doctor to allow him to play in the conference tournament that weekend.
Hank, he was trying to overcome, to return back to top form, to his dominating form, which he was beginning to do.
It was on a Sunday when we heard.
They were playing Portland, I guess.
My grandma got the call, and she called me, and she like, Daryl, something's wrong.
Derek called me and said, he did it again.
We were playing Siena, and we were beating up on them pretty good. And Sanford Jenkins, who was from Philadelphia, who played at Fordham, he walked into the locker room, and somebody must have told him.
It was the end of the game, and behind our bench was the family section. And everybody kind of like, the whole gym seemed like it got quiet, and I didn't know what was going around.
Doug and Randy and Train, they were on the floor, I believe. And he said, Hank passed out, and I think he's dead.
I got a call from a sports service out of New York. They said, I got some real bad news. Hank had another heart attack. He's in grave danger.
All of a sudden you just hear the screaming and yelling. His mother she's about 3 rows up and she's going crazy. Comes down, she comes out on the court. All of a sudden, actually there was a priest in the stands, I believe. He had a mild heart attack too. So we went from this like normal basketball game, all-American game, to chaos.
I think we all hoped that, he'd be all right.
I began to realize it was getting more serious and serious when they were trying to walk him off the court. He wasn't responding.
I was watching replays on ESPN, and I remember that replay as if it was just 20 minutes ago.
Tonight in Los Angeles, tragedy at the WCC tournament. Loyola Marymount senior Hank Gathers collapsed on the court. A short while later, he was pronounced dead. Good evening, everybody. I'm Chris Berman. Usually the Sunday Night Hour Sports Centers are the most fun show of the week, especially for some of us who haven't been in this chair for about a month. But tonight in Los Angeles, a story that transcends all merriment that is usually the world of sports. Hank Gathers, senior from Loyola Marymount, the 11th leading all-time scorer in NCAA history, led the NCAA in scoring last year, led the NCAA in rebounding last year, collapsed during the first half of his LMU's WCC quarterfinal game in Los Angeles against Portland. This was a scene about 7 minutes into the first half. The Gathers with the stuff, and LMU led 25-13. Then got back to play defense. You'll hear a whistle, and you might want to turn your head. Some of you at home will not like to see what's coming up. After the whistle, Gathers seemingly fine, takes a couple of steps and collapses. Writhing in pain, attended on court by team personnel, tried to get up once and collapsed again. The second time this season he has collapsed at home at the Gersten Pavilion. Happened back in December, the game against Santa Barbara.
This wasn't like the first time when, gosh, he crumbled. This is, oh my goodness. Boom, and it's total shock.
To be honest, I didn't actually think anything was major at that time. And I guess most of that time was I was stunned and shocked.
And they took him outside because it was stuffy in the gym. And so you walk over and you're kind of watching what's going on, and he's not moving. I mean, so you know this is critical.
I was halfway up in the stands, and it never entered my mind that it was more than him collapsing as he had the previous time. And my wife said to me, "You better get down there."
Even at that moment, I never thought of Hank Gathers passing away.
Lucille was out there, and she was holding me, and her head was over my shoulder, and I was holding her, looking down at them sticking needles like this long directly into Hank's heart. And still, I wasn't thinking he's in big, big trouble. And when they loaded him in the ambulance, and I asked the paramedic, how's he doing? And he just shook his head and said, he's got about 1 in 15,000 chance. And that was at the first moment that I thought, oh my goodness, he's going to be gone.
At 6:55 West Coast time, he was pronounced dead at Daniel Freeman Marina Hospital about an hour and 20 minutes after his collapse.
This is a tremendous loss for our university. This is an outstanding young man, athletically and as a human being.
I've always been a positive person, but it was just a tremendous shock to begin to think of Hank not being here.
And then when they told me that he had actually died, I was devastated. It's first time. It still bothers me to this day that someone so young and so special would die doing something he cared so much about.
I was sitting on my phone, and then David called me, and he said he's gone. And geez, I couldn't have done this interview 5 years ago, and here I am 10 years later. And it's a time and place I don't want to revisit. It was really hard.
Eric called me again, say, go on, just a hard pill to swallow.
A friend of mine from high school he just called me crying, and I really couldn't understand him, so, and my mom was like, something's wrong with Hank, so I ran around 5 days, and he told me, yeah, it's true, Hank passed.
As I'm walking towards the basketball court to go to the foul line, it hit me. And I'm like, he said he was dead? And I had to tell somebody, so I leaned over and I told Train.
Lionel Simmons, the great all-time player, the senior for LaSalle, who was in action tonight, semifinal action in the MAAC, and he was informed during LaSalle's game this evening against Siena a short while ago, and that was his reaction. He could not continue playing.
Lionel had his face covered with a towel, and Doug's crying, and then one of my assistants came over, just told them that Hank Gathers had died.
And then when the coach finally took me out, I looked at him and he was just crying, and he said, Hank is dead, Hank is dead. And I just remember running off the court. I don't even think I stayed on the bench. I just ran off.
It was like one of their brothers passing away. Someone they were very close to and felt deeply, had a lot of love for him.
It just doesn't seem right. Something is wrong with the world when somebody is young and strong and healthy with as big a future as Hank Gathers passes away so suddenly.
When we come back on SportsCenter Flashback, the nation mourns the tragedy from Los Angeles to Philadelphia.
I'm looking at the newspapers and it's on the front page, and I'm still in shock.